Ephesians chapter 2. The teacher is going to go on and he's going to talk about the other things that are meaningless. And in this chapter, he's going to look at three things in particular. Is there any meaning to chasing after pleasure and enjoyment? Is there any meaning chasing after wisdom? And is there any meaning to chasing after work? I mean, trying to work hard. Do any of these have meaning? So this is what he says. Verse 1. I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is folly. What does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself up with wine and embracing foolery and folly. My mind was still guiding me with wisdom while I did this, though. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under the sun during the few days of his life. Okay, so the teacher is looking at this and he's trying to figure out, what is the point? What should people concentrate on? What should people do during the time they're on earth? Because we're only on earth for a short while. So what should we do during that time? So he thinks about, okay, let me chase after enjoyment and pleasure and see if that is the best thing for humans to do. So he tries it. He tries to drink a lot. He tries to do foolish things, do silly things, stupid things that people do to find enjoyment. And he says the whole time, wisdom guides me. It doesn't mean that while he was drinking his alcohol and getting drunk, that he was being wise. No, the idea that wisdom did not leave him is that after he's finished drinking, after he's finished getting drunk, then he sits and thinks about what he's done and he realizes, oh, this is not such a great thing. At least according to him. Verse 4. So instead, I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens for myself. And I made parks for myself and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made huge reservoirs of water to water the groves of the trees. I bought male and female slaves, and they had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed huge amounts of silver and gold for myself, and the treasures of kings and entire provinces were mine. I acquired men and women singers, and a harem as well. The delights of the hearts of men, I had them all. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me had ever been. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me, though. Okay, so then he starts talking. Okay, so then he starts to think about what else. If it's not just pleasure, let's try building things. It's not just I go out and enjoy myself. Let me see if I can build things that I will enjoy, that I can look at, that I can have fun in. So he builds huge houses that he enjoys. He plants vineyards so he can drink. He makes these gardens, and back then a garden wasn't just a garden to look at. A garden was a garden to show off. The kings would build these, or rich people would build these to show that they were powerful. Because when you build a garden, you are forcing nature to do what you want. So the building of the garden means that this person is claiming to be superior. They have power, they have control over nature. And this is what he was doing. He was doing all this to control nature, water, watering areas so that he could water the flowers and the plants and the trees. And then he looked at wealth. Some people enjoy being wealthy. So he says, okay, let me try being wealthy. So he bought slaves, and that was a way of checking wealth, is how many slaves you had. So he did that. He bought herds and he multiplied them and they grew. It's not just that he bought and spent money and it was a loss. No, he bought these slaves and they had children and they had children, and his people grew and became more powerful and more powerful. He keeps acquiring silver and gold, and if the teacher is Solomon, he was considered one of the richest men ever to live. It was said that silver became so common in Jerusalem, it was like stone. Everything was made from gold. Everyone was plated with gold. Silver just became something that was almost worthless. And he continues this, right? He gets men and women singers so he can enjoy listening to them. And he gets a harem. And the word here is a very crude word. that he uses for women in this. He doesn't call them women, he calls them a very crude word, which we won't get into, but think of the crudest and rudest way of talking about a woman in a very, erotic, sexual way. And that's the word used here. And it's very clear from this, it means that he is sleeping around. And any woman he finds, he adds her to his harem of wives, makes her a concubine of his. And this is, if this is Solomon, it's true. He had thousands of women that he kept for himself. He says the delights of the hearts of men. So anything that a man could want, the teacher has done. He says, I became greater. So he was more wealthy. He was more powerful than anyone who had ever ruled Jerusalem. But in all this, his wisdom stayed with him. Once again, it doesn't mean while he was doing these things, he was being wise, but his wisdom didn't run away. After he's done these things, he could sit back and think about it. Was this the right thing? He continues by this little bit of poetry. He says, and realize this is wisdom poetry. So the point of this is to make people smarter at the end. So he says, I denied myself nothing my heart's desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work. And this was the reward for my labor. Yet when I looked at all I had done, and I wondered, what has all this work achieved? Everything is meaningless. It's a chasing of the wind. Nothing has really been gained under the sun. So he is a person who did whatever evil, whatever selfish, whatever desire he had, he tried it out. And the reason that the teacher was doing this was he wanted to see if there really is any point to life. Is there really anything in it that we can do in this world that will be a point? So he does. He does whatever he wants. Everything he thinks of, good or bad, he doesn't care. He just tries it. He's trying all these things. But the good thing is that he still has wisdom after he tries it, and he's able to look back and realize, no, this was all pointless. All this stuff that I did, it serves no purpose. It's all going to go away at some point. And he looks at this, and you can see that even though he's a wisdom teacher, even though he's someone that's quoted in the Bible, he is doing things that are not biblical. He's going to try everything, good or evil, to see if there's any purpose to it. Okay, so when you quote from Ecclesiastes, you have to be careful where you quote from. You need to quote from the places where he's doing the good things and where he's giving good advice, not the places where he says, oh yes, and I did this to see if it would work, and it didn't work. Don't quote from those places. Look through it. Look and see the places where he actually is making a good point, where he's making conclusions. And that's what we should look for. And these are not conclusions. These are all just, I tried this, I tried this, I tried this. It would be, if he was a modern person, it would be like, I tried drugs, I tried cocaine, I tried marijuana, I tried race cars, I tried women, I tried rock and roll, I tried it all. And what does he say in the end? I looked around at all the wealth, everything I had, and I realized nothing had been achieved because nothing was really going to be meaningful and nothing was going to stay on.